Hello, goblins and ghouls, and welcome to the first ever episode of Screams Cyanide. I am your host, your ghost host with the most, your friendly neighborhood baked goth girlfriend, Miss Sami Sue, and let's talk horror.
A really quick about me before we get started, since this is my first episode. I am a bass playing, horror loving, retired burlesque dancing, alternative mom of a teenager and an infant. Yeah, I know. Who has been watching horror movies since the dawn of time. I first saw Killer Clowns from Outer Space when I was way too young to have seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And since then, I have been your resident creepy girl, giving reviews on social media and, making suggestions to my friends. And for years, they have all told me that I should, make a YouTube and give reviews. And I said, no one cares what I have to say. But eventually, I got over my imposter syndrome, and here I am. I figured the best way to introduce myself on a first episode would be to go over my favorite horror movies of all time. So I was originally going to do a top five, but couldn't quite narrow down my list to five. So I decided to do a top 10. People do top 10s all the time, felt like a good number. But I struggled to get my list down to 10. So this is my top 10 plus honorable mention. It's not my top 14. It is my top 10 plus a few honorable mention. So with that being said, let's hop into the honorable mention. Let go. First up on my list of honorable mention goes to, that's a drum roll, the Blair Witch Project. The first thing you will learn about me very quickly is that I am obsessed with found footage. It is easily one of my absolute favorite subgenres, and I feel like Blair Witch is the granddaddy of found footage films. I know a lot of people don't love it. It's also the granddaddy of the terrible shaky camera. I think really only paired with Cloverfield. But I do think that it did something that horror hadn't seen yet. It really had theater goers. I'm going to leave that in, believing that it was real. It really was the first viral sensation before viral sensations were really a thing. And I think it really did have one of the most terrifying endings in film history. So this really gets up there in my list, really just for kicking off my love of found footage. So honorable mention goes to the Blair Witch Project. My next one might be a little controversial, but next up in my honorable mentions goes to Saw. So while I love the entire franchise, I am going to be technically just talking about the first one. I do think that Saw is a film that doesn't get the love it deserves. I think a lot of people write it off for being too gory, being, an exploitation film, and I think it really gets too grouped in with other films of the time, like the Hostels, things like that. But Saw actually manages to have a really cool sort of whodunit detective mystery storyline going that I feel like a lot of the other gore fests don't manage to maintain. And it does manage to keep it going for quite a bit of the franchise. I know it does fall apart eventually. It goes off into, its own separate things with Spiral, and don't get me started on Saw X. I have feelings, but I don't think that the first 2004 Saw gets the credit that it deserves. Also, sorry, M. Night Shyamalan, but one of the coolest twist endings of all time. I didn't see it coming. I know most people didn't. So shout out to Saw for being better than people give it credit for. Next up in my list of honorable mention, and this one was really tough to not get onto the top 10. It almost made it. This goes to Get Out. I don't know if you all noticed, but so, with that being said, this movie was particularly terrifying for me on a sort of personal level. The writing was brilliant, the acting was brilliant, that all goes without saying. But as a Black person, this really hit in some of my deepest, like legitimately most absolute deepest fears. I do think that there was so much symbolism throughout the film that was relevant to Black Americans that may have been lost on other audiences. The fact that the auctioning off of the Black folks obviously is a callback to chattel slavery, right? But then we also have the silver spoon being the means in which the folks are sort of controlled, being a reference to sort of white liberal privilege and that being a way in which it controls Black Americans. We have picking cotton out of the chair and that being the way in which Chris manages to keep himself from being hypnotized. We have the repeated symbolism of the deer. I even read this really cool bit about the creepy scene with the Fruit Loops and how Rose is eating them separately, being a representation of the separation of white and colored because she has the Fruit Loops and the milk separately. Chef's kiss. So much going on within this film. It's terrifying. So well acted, so brilliantly written. And again, I don't think Jordan Peele necessarily gets his flowers because I think it's a really trendy racist dog whistle to be like, oh, I hate Jordan Peele films for no reason other than the fact that he's Black. So, with that being said, I love me some Get Out. Definitely gets honorable mention. And last but very much not least on my honorable mention list, and I do feel as though I might lose some of you for this not making it into my top 10. I really did go back and forth. I struggled trying to get it on there, but honorable mention goes to John Carpenter's Halloween. Don't kill me. I love John Carpenter. I met John Carpenter. He hugged me and called me sweetheart and told me I smelled nice and I like couldn't even speak. Halloween is the perfect slasher. It is the perfect slasher. The Shape is the perfect bad guy. I don't have a single negative thing I can say about Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis, perfect. Dr. Loomis, perfect. The entire film is really just so iconic in terms of slashers. It gives us all of these original things that we hadn't seen yet in slashers because they weren't tropes yet because they really were getting done for the first time in films like Halloween. I love the Boogeyman, and I love, love, love John Carpenter's Halloween. So that brings us to the main event. We are now entering into Sami Sue's top 10 favorite horror films of all time. If you ask me tomorrow, the list might change, but these tend to be the 10 that end up in there, even if they move around a little bit. So, coming in at number 10, we have Sleepaway Camp. Okay, so no one who has seen Sleepaway Camp, I feel like, doesn't love Sleepaway Camp, right? It is the 80s summer slasher. It is silly. It has the short shorts and the crop tops on the aggressively 70s, honestly, dudes. It actually has teenagers playing teenagers, which, like, never happens. It's always, like, 30-year-olds trying to get passed off as teens. It has some of my favorite, silliest kills. The cook melting away to nothing and terrible cutaways. Just melting. One of my absolute favorite kills is the curling iron and the Frankenstein arm shadows. So good. But I also think that this movie was a commentary on trans youth before that conversation was even happening. I do think it kind of raised a nature versus nurture sort of argument for what happens when you force someone to live a truth that is not theirs. And while it's sort of the opposite of the experience of trans youth, whereas they are forced to live as cisgender when they're not, versus Angela, who was forced to live as a girl when she was not. Spoiler alert, it's a 30-year-old movie. You'll get over it. 40, oh my god, I'm old. 40-year-old movie. I do think that it's saying a lot more than conversation leads to.
So yeah, coming in at number 10, we have Sleepaway Camp. Next up, coming in at number 9, we have Stephen King's Children of the Corn. Creepy kids are scary as hell. Creepy kids are so scary. I don't know if it's because I'm a mom. I don't know if it's because I was a creepy kid, but creepy kids are terrifying. And I love creepy kid films. This was probably one of the earlier ones that I saw, other than Child's Play. I saw Chucky for the first time when I was, oh my gosh, 8 or 9, and it was like my favorite film for years. But that technically wasn't a creepy kid film. That was a creepy possessed doll film, but I digress. Children of the Corn has been one of my faves since childhood. I love that it is a religious movie. It's a cult movie. It's a creepy kid movie. It's kind of a monster movie, all in one film. It gives you all the things that you love, like all packaged into one. It also uses so many horror tropes, but uses them so well. We have the gas station attendant harbinger. We have the dog warning. We have the kids coloring creepy foreshadowing pictures. And it's actually so funny. I was just listening to Dead Meat's last podcast on their horror tropes that they hate, and they went on a rant about how much they hate kids in their crayon drawings. So sorry, Dead Meat, don't cancel me, but I love the creepy kid crayon drawings. I love them. Also, just to add in the cyanide in the Screams and Cyanide, that diner scene does not get the love it deserves. How terrifying is it that a bunch of kids poison an entire diner full of people with Isaac outside just like, ooh, and it's like actually pretty graphic for a pretty mainstream film in the 80s. Love it. Love it. Not to mention the quotability. Is that a word? Quotability? Who do you know that doesn't scream out Outlander or Malachi? You know, like they want you too, Malachi. So good. So good. Definitely up there in the top 10. All right, so coming into some more recent films. At number 8, we have The Lodge. I love so much about this film. I really do. It is really sort of quiet and beautiful, which I think is kind of underrated and not done often enough. You know, I don't need jump scares. I don't need boogeymen. Sometimes you just need like a creep fest, and I feel like this does that really well. I also really love cult themes and religious themes in films, and this does both of those incredibly well. I think one of the cool things about this is that there is a pretty shocking opener that is almost reminiscent of Scream, where you have a big name and you expect that big name actor to be a big character, and then surprise, something wild happens in the beginning. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think there's just the most brilliant use of light and shadow work. There's amazing sound work. This is just a beautifully done film. But I think the one thing that really gets to me with this one is that it really blurs the lines between antagonist and protagonist. And by the end, like, you're not even sure who you should be empathizing with. Like the line of who's the bad guy is very blurred, and you almost get they kind of deserve it by the ending. And I love when those sort of lines get blurred and you are brought to these almost sort of moral questions of, well, should they have done that? Did they make this person do it? Without giving spoilers to the ending, it is chilling. It is a very, very sort of chilling, scary, uncomfortable film. So if you like a slower burn, a good sort of twist and a good payoff toward the end, definitely check out The Lodge. Coming in at number 7, we are hopping over to Thailand for The Medium. So this is one that has very polarizing reviews. I found it to be genuinely really scary. They spent a great deal of time establishing character development and family relationships, which I feel like can be lost in your everyday horror film, especially in found footage. Let's be real. Found footage doesn't always have the best writing. Again, surprise, there's a found footage film on my list. But I really feel like the writing in this spent enough time developing the characters that you do start to really care about what happens to them. I think one of the biggest complaints about this film is the runtime. It comes in at 2 hours and I want to say 11 minutes, which I know most people aren't okay with unless it's a Marvel film. But I feel like this film is in 3 very distinct parts, 3 very distinct acts, and I think the pacing works in that it really needs those 2 hours to develop this whole thing it's developing. One of the biggest complaints, and I think the most frequent complaint I see about The Medium, is the ending, and I think it gets a lot of hate that it doesn't deserve. There's a lot of lore throughout this. There is a lot of different sort of curses and different things that happen through different possessions, a lot of almost like religious and spiritual things that are happening that all sort of culminate in this big over-the-top ending. And if you're not remembering all of these pieces, or if you're not putting them all together, then the ending is going to feel like a hot mess. So you do have to really put all of it together to understand what's happening at the ending. And it's sort of a lot after a 2-hour movie to remember all of these different things. But I do feel like the ending makes more sense than people give it credit for. And I do think it's a hell of a payoff for the 2 hours that were invested, whereas a lot of other people say that it was a waste of time. For me, I think this film was beautifully shot. I think it's a really cool take on a possession film. I think it's really cool to see possession from the lens of a non-Catholic take. I think it's really awesome to see a ritual instead of a Catholic exorcism. I think it's really cool to hear about different spirits and different practices that don't come from this westernized Catholic idea of how to handle it. I love exorcism films. I love possession films. Again, I love religious themes, and I love that this gives us a different view of those while being absolutely terrifying. Warning, if you are someone who absolutely cannot do any sort of animal cruelty, even if it's fake, there's a scene with a dog. That's all I'm gonna tell you. It can be rough. But if you can make it through that, then you should definitely check out The Medium. Next up at number 6, we have As Above, So Below. What a surprise. It's another found footage film. I love this movie. I love it. I probably don't even have too much to say about it if I'm going to be completely real. Catacombs of Paris is already just such a cool setting for a movie, right? Like that in and of itself is so spooky. Add in the fact that there is a developed storyline with a very cool background. It's not just like some kids going to check out the catacombs because it's spooky. It's an established archaeologist who is looking for an actual artifact. Like, they have a reason to be effing around down there. I think it's this really cool dynamic between these sort of scholars and then these like French street rats who know the way underneath and are showing them around. So the characters are really cool. And then like the one random token black guy who's like, why am I here? I should not be here. Should have listened to Benji. But this movie's really cool. It has some of the most terrifying scenes. And what I love about them is that they're very simple. I think I have a theme here. You know, not everything has to be big, bright, crazy, flashy jump scares. I love that, you know, this movie plays on a phone ringing where a phone shouldn't be ringing and that being really scary. A piano playing where a piano shouldn't be playing and that being really scary. Just sort of these very simple things that, you know, in a regular setting wouldn't be anything, but when you're friggin' underground surrounded by skulls, like, are terrifying. There is a scene with a car that, like, the image of is something that will stick with you. It's very, very cool. And there's just a lot of religious and sort of satanic takes on like old religious tropes. It's a cool one. Not too much to really say. It's just a cool one. It's nothing life-altering, but I really dig it. So as above, so below. Coming in number 5 is one that is questionably even horror, but I love it. We're rolling with it. Number 5 is 2015's The Invitation. Now, really quick, I have to emphasize that this is the film The Invitation from 2015. This is not the vampire film from 2022. I cannot emphasize this enough. I hated that one. This is a film of the same name from 2015. All right, are we all clear? Okay, here we go. Did I put in another cult movie? Do I have a theme going here? All right, so I love this one. And it is very, unlike anything else on the list. I dig films that all happen in one location, right? So the first Saw all taking place in the bathroom, Devil all taking place in the elevator. I would even give it to like Belko Experiment all being in like the one building. I really dig that sort of claustrophobic feeling of one scene. Knock at the Cabin, even though it wasn't a great movie, like did that really well. Anyway, I digress. So this movie all takes place at a house party. It is not a house party. That sounds like teenagers. It's a dinner party. This film all takes place at a dinner party. And it's already a very uncomfortable setting because like this poor guy is going to a party with his ex-wife and her new husband. He's bringing his new girlfriend. It's a house he used to live in. I guess like wifey got it in the divorce sort of thing. His son died. It's all very uncomfortable, but he's being a good sport, right? Like he's going, he's doing the thing, he's showing up, their mutual friends are there. You know, but it's already like this really tense setting, and he picks up so quick on the fact that something doesn't feel right. Something does not feel right, and no one will listen to him. Everyone is just assuming that, you know, he's just uncomfortable. It's just the situation. No one will listen to Will that something isn't right until it's too late when the rest of them realize that something isn't right. I love that this is a real-time, minute-for-minute film. It really adds you into that sort of intensity. I love the acting in this. There's actually some really cool folks in this. Tammy Blanchard plays Eden. I'm terrible with names. I will be the first to admit that, but I know I've seen her in a bunch of stuff. Also, John Carroll Lynch is in this, and he's actually like pretty spooky and is perfect in his role. So this is one that, you know, there's no, it's really not a horror movie until like sort of the very end. And even then it's almost more of a thriller, but it is tense. It is tense. It is uncomfy. And if you are into just sort of these like very uncomfortable cult films, like, oh man, they straight up drink the entire Kool-Aid, then this is one you'll dig. Also, the ending, it lends itself perfectly to a sequel, and I'm so glad that they never did it. It's not a cliffhanger necessarily. It is just the most foreboding, icky feeling, oh crap ending, and I love it. I love it so, so, so much. So 2015's The Invitation. Don't watch the 2022 vampire crap. Okay, if I look or sound any different, I apologize. I just had to switch devices because I have a really cute baby and I ran out of storage space on my phone. So, coming in at number 4, we have... Oh, Patches came to help. Ready to announce number 4? Coming in at number 4, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What can you say about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that hasn't already been said about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Leatherface is everything. Of all the big bad masked boogeymen, I love the fact that he is not just this giant, stoic, silent, mysterious guy. Like, no, you are gonna hear Leatherface coming, and he is just here to F things up. Like, there is no mystery, there is no mystique around Leatherface. He is this enormous dude with a chainsaw, and he is coming to get you. Like, straight forward. I do think there is a discussion to be had that has been had to death about, you know, whether he is actually, you know, a bad person or if it just is his messed up family that created this sort of monster, blah, 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 blah. We could get into all that, but I just love it. I love the sort of simplicity of it. I love the direct ties to true crime, to Ed Gein, to, you know, films before it, to films after. The influence of Texas Chainsaw is just never ending. I love that we get one of the most annoying characters of all time. Let's be real. Franklin had it coming. I said what I said. But then we also get like these really cool minor characters, like the hitchhiker, and that entire scene with him just like being crazy, cutting his hand, lighting the picture on fire. All of that is like just so iconic for like no reason. It's just dope. And memorable. And I feel like that's the thing with this film, is it's all just so memorable without even relying on any gore. It also has one of just the most beautiful and devastating endings of all time. You know, the way it is shot, this sort of juxtaposition between being covered in blood, but also laughing hysterically. It's not a happy laugh. You associate smiling and laughter with happiness, but no, she's never gonna be okay. And then we just have Leatherface in the background, you know, doing this incredible like sunset rage dance with his chainsaw, and nothing like has touched that cinematically since, in a visual sense. It's uncomfortable. It's not a happy ending, but you leave just like, ooh, like nothing is okay. And that sort of bleak ending is, it's just so good. It's just so good. Texas Chainsaw, number 4. All right, if you're still with me, you have made it to my top 3. This is where you guys are going to start throwing tomatoes at me, but you know what? Me and Patches are ready. They're not the most popular opinions, but I stand by them. Just because I love them doesn't mean I think they're the best. They're just my favorite. And I think that's an important takeaway. But I digress. Here we go. My top 3. Coming in at number 3, possibly my most controversial, number 3 goes to Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. I saw House of a Thousand Corpses for the first time in theaters when I was 14. And at that point, I had really only seen, more mainstream stuff, things I could get at the library on VHS because I was a poor kid and that's how I got media. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. I didn't know what Grindhouse was, I hadn't seen anything outside of like classics or mainstream releases. And we were in the world of early 2000s horror where it was a lot of teen slashers, things like that. And then here comes this absolutely depraved and just effed up horror film where, there's no rhyme or reason. There's no real story. These two couples just happen to stop for fried chicken and gasoline and never make it home. Otis is such a disgusting character. He's just... There's no redeeming qualities to Otis. He's just evil and nasty. Baby, as much as, I'm sorry, I can't stand Sherry Moon as an actress, Baby's character is just so circusy and really just adds to this feeling of just crazy as you are introduced to the family. Mama Firefly is such a kind of gross sex pot. Sorry, R.I.P. Karen Black, but and then my beloved Captain Spaulding, R.I.P. Sid Haig. This film belonged to Sid. Otis had Devil's Rejects, Baby had Three from Hell, but House of a Thousand Corpses belonged to Captain Spaulding. And he was perfect. He was everything. House of a Thousand Corpses was just a really formative film for little spooky baby Sammy. It changed the way I looked at horror. It really set the groundwork for me to look into weirder, creepier, nastier things. Fish Boy stayed with me for a long time. The scene when we first see Dr. Satan underground stayed with me for a long time. The bunny suit stayed with me for a long time. So many things that I feel like people look over because, it's cool to hate on Rob Zombie. Like, yeah, hate on Lords of Salem, hate on the Halloween remakes, definitely hate on Halloween 2. 31 might get a pass, it's a little bit fun, but don't touch my beloved House of a Thousand Corpses. I love it so much. So that's number 3. Coming in at number 2 is a film that has probably never been in anyone's top 10 ever, but I love it. So, coming in at number 2, we have The Last Exorcism. Okay, so it starts off with this preacher who, grew up in the South, son of a preacher man, realized very, very young that he was very good at it. And even though it was BS, he did it because he knew how, he was good at it, and it was a family business. And even though he knew that the exorcisms that he was providing were fake, he realized he was just providing a service to people, right? Like, he was making them feel better. Even if it didn't technically do anything, he was making them feel better. But he got to a point where he was really questioning his faith. His son was sick. He didn't have health insurance as a preacher. It was just time to let it go. He wasn't really believing it anymore. So he had a film crew, a documentary crew, come out and film one last exorcism with him so he could show all the sort of secret tips and tricks and ways that he faked his way through them. So he has a stack of mail like this big that is all people that are requesting exorcisms from him. So he's sort of going through and he just randomly picks one and he's just skimming through it. And he's like, oh, this is what always happens. Yep, livestock is being slaughtered. Yep, bloody clothes found. Yep, please come help. There's a demon. Save my farm. So they go, they get there. They're thinking that it is the man who owns the farm, and it turns out to actually be the 16-year-old girl. So that is the twist, because Cotton doesn't even work with children, and it was his whoopsies. He didn't actually read, the letter thoroughly. But they get there, they're willing to help her. And, we meet this sweet, sweet, sweet sheltered girl. We're led to think that there might be some abuse, maybe incest, maybe, we're not sure. Maybe, just guilt and shame around sex that she's trying to hide from her family. Things that, you would see in deep, 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 deep rural Southern, families, things that are sort of taboo, but you can write off the things that are happening with these, but it ends up not being what you think it is. And the cool thing about this movie is that we get probably 3 fake outs. Like, this movie could end like 3 different times with 3 different endings, but they're all twists. They're all fakes, which is so rad. It just keeps you on your toes for the last, 40 minutes. A lot of people feel like the penultimate ending is not great. It's a little cheap. And, it might be a little cheesy, but I feel like it's worth it because the road to get there is so rad. We also have a young Caleb Landry Jones before he was Dracula, and before he was the weird wrestling brother in Get Out. He plays such a good bad guy. And when I first saw this, I didn't know who he was, but I was just low-key in love with him. And he has turned into such an almost horror icon these days, which I think is really rad. So, yes, it's found footage. No, I'm not sorry. Do you know how hard it was to not just make an entire list of found footage for my top 10? I had to leave out Hell House. I had to leave out Jerusalem. I had to leave out Lake Mungo. I had to leave out Devil's Pass. I had to leave out Incantation. I had to leave out Ganja Haunted Asylum. That's 6 right there. I might do a top 10 of my favorite found footage. Anyway, no shame in my found footage game, but I really do love this film so much. So coming in at number 2 is The Last Exorcism. We've made it to number 1. And this is where I'm going to lose all credibility with the horror community, and I don't care. Everyone is sick to death of this being everyone's favorite. Everyone is sick to death of this movie being praised, and it's overdone and overpraised for a reason. So here we go. My number 1 favorite horror film goes to Ari Aster's Hereditary. Oh, hey, we have another cult movie. No, this is the perfect horror movie. It is the perfect horror movie. And I know that that is a huge statement. I know that people have big feelings about that. It is the perfect horror movie. The first time I saw this, it changed who I am as a human being. I went into it with pretty high hopes, and usually when I go into a film with, you know, high expectations, I'm usually pretty disappointed. But this film, I sat there in the theater with my bestie for a solid 5 minutes after, just like, I need a minute. Like, I don't know what just happened. It did something to me that no other film has ever done, and to this day hasn't. Hereditary takes themes of grief, themes of family, themes of, you know, motherhood, parenting, and does so many just awful things with them, rips them up to shreds, turns them inside out, and doesn't let you breathe for a second through it. I mean, we begin the film with the death of the matriarch, right? So right off the bat, we start with a dead mom. We go to a grief group, and we are sitting there hearing about the other deaths in Annie's family, but at that point, we think that there's just like rampant mental health that runs through the family. And I know there's 1,000,001 commentaries on how this film is really just like a commentary on mental health and it's not really a demon. I don't look at it that way, all right? I'm taking it for what it is. I am taking it as Payman is actually real. That is what's happening in this film. So when you hear about, you know, the brother starving himself to death, or, you know, the dad killing himself, whatever, like, none of that really is mental health. Like, that stuff is Payman. It is Payman trying to get into this male host, and it's Ellen sort of creating this happening. The only reason that Peter is safe for as long as he is because Annie keeps Ellen away from him, which is why she digs her claws into Charlie, and which is why it needs to be corrected, because Payman needs a male host. It was always supposed to be Peter. And I feel like so many people who watched this are just like, oh, the girl's head gets knocked off, blah, and then don't follow the rest of the movie. There is so much happening. There are so many small clues. There are so many hints throughout that show that this was all premeditated. All of it was premeditated. Charlie's death was premeditated, everything. And the way that it is played out, the way that it is presented is just horrifying. Obviously, the scene where Charlie dies is shocking. It's disgusting. It is awful. But for me, it wasn't even the pole that was the most upsetting thing. For me, it was the silence. You have all this chaos, you know, the wind blowing her head out the window, Peter trying to comfort her, speeding, and then after she hits, it is just silent. And then Peter just drives away. And then he goes home and gets into bed, and it is just silent. And you're sitting there like, what the actual hell? And you are forced to just sit with this trauma in absolute silence. And the only thing that really breaks it is Toni Collette's absolute gut-wrenching, shrieking, devastating scream when she finds Charlie. How is that not brilliant? Brilliant cinematography. It's so good. And then, you know, from there, we have the subtle things, right? Like, we have Toni Collette floating in the ceiling. We have Peter's reflection smiling back at him. We have one single isolated after Charlie is gone. These small things that just keep you unsettled. Even the score has this like constant sort of pulsing sound in the background that keeps you so unsettled. And then we have, you know, the bigger scares, right? So like Dad just spontaneously combusting is so messed up, and poor Dad, no one ever talks about him. We have Toni Collette bashing her head on the ceiling, cutting her own head off with friggin' piano wire. It's all nuts. My favorite scene is actually when Peter's in class and then all of a sudden the hand just goes up and the eye does the thing and then he bashes his face. Like, nothing particularly crazy is happening. It's just so unsettling. It's so unsettling. The scene where Annie is channeling Charlie and her voice is just coming out of Annie's face. So beautifully done. Peter genuinely looks so terrified. I've been talking for like over 5 minutes and I could just keep going forever. The scene that really gets me, and I think it's because I'm a mom, I just noticed that there's been a bottle in frame this entire time. Okay, because I'm a mom, I think it really hit me was the dinner table scene where Toni Collette just has that outburst on Peter, and it is just gut-wrenching as a parent, because how do you want to hate the person that took one child from you, but if that person is your other child, then like, how do you reconcile that? You know, the love of a mother gets sort of torn in half, and I feel like that scene just shows that struggle for her so deeply. And I'm sorry, but I have quoted "get that effing face off your face" so many times since then. It is probably my most overused line as a mother. So I will stop rambling because I've been talking for a long time, but I could talk forever about Hereditary. I know every horror critiquer, reviewer, expert is so sick of hearing about it. I'll talk about it forever because I think it deserves it. I think it is an absolute masterpiece, and that's why it comes in at number 1. So, goblins and ghouls, you made it. That's it. That is the very first episode of Screams Cyanide. You've learned a little bit about me. You've learned about my top 10, and now I want to learn about you. Tell me about your top favorite horror movies. Tell me what else you want to see from me. Do you want to see my favorite list of found footage? Do you want to hear about my least favorite horror movies? Do you want single reviews? Do you want to hear about my makeup routine? Do you want to hear anything spooky, anything horror themed, anything macabre and, grotesque? Nothing is off limits. So please let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Screams Cyanide. I am so excited to get this off the ground and to start a spooky little community here. We're not professional. We're not fancy. We're just here to talk horror. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know what you want to see next, and stay spooky. It's your host, your ghost host with the most, Miss Sami Sue here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.